Hey Gators and sports fans, get all your Gator talk, news, analysis, and opinions on the Pod Up with Matthews in the Morning podcast. Find us on your favorite podcast platform or watch us on Facebook Live between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. every weekday. Pod Up, because we are Gator fans. So say it's great to be a Florida Gator.
Good morning and welcome to this Monday edition of Pod Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Got a good show lined up for you today. We're going to get to JC here in just a second. Second portion of the show, we'll be joined by Gator Hall of Famer and SEC Network analyst Chris Doering. Get his thoughts going on college football and also what happened in the SEC this weekend. But let's go straight to the Titan MR hotline. And we're joined by JC. Good morning, JC. How are you?
Hey, I'm great, QB. Thank you. Good to be with you again as we get started for another week. Doing a lot better than those sports fans in the state of Georgia right now.
Well, that's true. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that in a minute. But let's talk about what happened yesterday. Okay.
Well, I was going to get to that. That's what I was
the Tampa Bay Rays are now going to be playing the LA Dodgers, which
Dodgers.
I tell you what, it was some phenomenal baseball in these two series. If not for Cody Bellinger, who's an MVP, and Mookie Betts, who's an MVP, the Braves would be playing in the World Series. Those guys made some unbelievable plays.
They did, and you know, it's too bad. I mean, here we are Friday talking about locking up the Braves for the World Series, first one since 1999. It's not happening. So all the fans in Atlanta are dying right now, a slow death, because they're the Braves up 3-1 on the Dodgers with all that pitching. I certainly didn't see the Dodgers winning 3 straight games, but if anybody could, it would likely be the Dodgers. And there they are on their way to play Tampa Bay. But Tampa Bay, you know, winning that game 7 really showed that Morton is some kind of pitcher. That guy, I tell you, when you've got a game 7 to win, he's the guy you want. And I think it's great that Tampa Bay was able to salvage that 7th game and end up in Dallas there to play the Dodgers. I think it'll be great. I mean, there was a little atmosphere in that stadium with some fans, and it looked like we're going to set up for a really exciting World Series starting tomorrow night.
So as of right now, since it starts tomorrow, we won't have you back on until Wednesday. Who are you picking to win the World Series?
Well, I you know, you'd be crazy not to go with the Dodgers, right? I mean, they're everybody's favorite, but that's been the story about the Rays. Nobody picks them and they end up being the best team in the American League. And then nobody picks them and they end up winning their divisional series. And then nobody picks them and they end up beating the Yankees. And then nobody picks them and then they end up winning the American League pennant.
They were favored before the season to win the World Series.
Well, right, really? So you think a lot of people went to Las Vegas and put money on Tampa Bay to win the World Series?
I don't know what those people did. I'm just going by what the people predicted that the Rays would win the World Series this year.
Well, I don't know. Maybe it was because there's only 60 games or whatever the case may be, but I didn't think that we were really doing a whole lot of pre-planning for the Rays to be in the World Series, but they were the best team in the American League. Clearly they were, and it was just more evident after it happened than, to me at least, than it was evident before it happened. But, you know, you have a 60-game series. Now, I'm not putting asterisks on anything right now because of what we've had to go through and what those teams have had to go through and how they've had to play their games in empty ballparks and so forth. But the Rays are the best team in the American League. There's no question now. I mean, there's just none. And they have the pitching with 3 starters that are as good as anybody that could win this World Series. So I'm going to go with the pitching. I'm going to go with Tampa Bay. I mean, why would you pick against them after what they've just pulled? So I don't really like the Dodgers. Never been a big Dodgers fan. So I've got the hat on 47.com coming because I couldn't find my Rays hat in the closet, which has just really ruined my weekend. So I'm going with Tampa Bay after what they did to your Aaron Rodgers Green Bay Packers yesterday. So we'll go.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting that what I've liked about this playoffs, you know, there's no days off.
Yeah,
I think that just makes it so much more exciting.
Yeah,
because guys don't have the proper rest and all that. Now they're going back to, in the World Series, they're going to have some rest days, some off days, even though there's no travel. They are, which I don't like. But I think the NBA and Major League Baseball need to go to, from now on, when we get back to normalcy, where they just, you know, even in basketball, even if you have to fly back and play the next day, do it. I just think it makes it more exciting. I don't know why.
Well, I get that, but we will have 3 games in the World Series done before the weekend. So you'll have games 1 and 2 to Tuesday, Wednesday night, and then game 3 is on Friday. So they get Thursday off. But this thing will be done. This time next week, we'll probably be talking about a World Series championship or a World Series champion, maybe. So they'll have, I don't know, 6 games before this time next week, and this thing could end in 6. So I'm excited to see Tampa do it. It gives you some interest, some local flavor, and it's exciting for the city of Tampa, who's trying to back up the Tampa Bay Lightning Stanley Cup. And who knows what these guys are capable of doing after what they did yesterday. So this is exciting for the city of Tampa. It's just unfortunate that right now you can't go buy tickets to watch, but it doesn't matter. The bars and restaurants are full, I would guess, the sports bars anyway, in Central Florida. So it's exciting for the Tampa Bay fans, no doubt.
It is. So now that JC's adopted the Bucks, now that is Rams team, the school that you actually attended but didn't play football at had a big win Saturday night.
Oh man. Yeah, Georgia haven't beaten Alabama since 2007, and every expert on television picked Georgia, every one of them, except David Pollack, who is a Georgia graduate, who played at Georgia. He and Desmond Howard picked Alabama. Of course, we can't get Reese Davis, who went to Alabama, who I knew back in the day, to say anything about Alabama because he's scared to. I guess that's me too, because I took Georgia with the points. I also took Texas A&M a few weeks ago against Alabama with the points. I can tell you from here on out, I am not taking anybody to beat Alabama until they play Clemson. And then we'll see what that's all about when it happens.
Well,
if it
like
happens.
I said, you're sitting here critiquing the so-called analysts on the Home Depot college football game day for picking Georgia, and you picked Georgia to cover the spread.
Pollack has Howard picked Alabama, but I'm telling you from here on out, I'm not picking against Alabama. So
here's an interesting stat though. Since Kirby's taken over at Georgia, Georgia and Alabama have played 180 minutes of football over 3 games since 2017.
Right. And
the Bulldogs have led or been tied for 149 of those minutes.
They can't finish. They can't finish against that team, and they haven't won since 2007. So Alabama has their number. They will likely or have a chance to play again. I'm hoping that's not the case because I'd like to see Florida win the East. So if that's possible, if the Gators can get back on the field and play football, which I hope they will in 3 weeks or 2 weeks, then certainly they'll have a shot at the SEC East. Although I will tell you, after watching Kentucky's defense play, maybe they'll have a shot, but I doubt it. I think it's Florida and Georgia, and certainly Alabama could end up playing Georgia as many as 2 or 3 times this season, which is just insanity because Clemson won't have played anybody even remotely competitive until maybe the college football until the college football playoff. And that's just a crazy imbalance in football to me. But that's just the way it is because Clemson's in the AC conference. So you want to go through some of these games we talked about on Friday? QB?
Yes. Speaking of Clemson, though, I feel like they're the best team in football. I know they haven't played anyone, but they are so sound defensively. They fly around. Offensively, they got the best player in the country. Trevor Lawrence. They got the best tailback in the country who can do it all, ETN. They're the best team. And then Alabama's the second best team because of their offense. It's explosive. It's very, very complete. It may be the best Alabama offense they've ever had at that school.
It wouldn't surprise me at all to believe that. Some of the stats that you've researched over the weekend are just mind-blowing when you get over 520 some odd yards against the Georgia Bulldogs defense.
Yeah, I want to say, I think it was an SEC record Alabama set. First time a quarterback's ever thrown for over 400 yards. First time you ever had a running back go over 150 and then 2 receivers over 160.
They couldn't cover them. I mean, you throw that corner blitz at Alabama, and that safety is all by himself against somebody like Jalen Waddle. And if Jones has times to throw it, it's over. That
was a great play call. They had it schemed up and had max protection. Usually, you have to throw a sight adjust there. I thought it was great scheming by both coaches in that game. I thought it was a phenomenal college football game. Honestly,
it really was. It really was.
Alabama just made more plays. I think the difference in that game to me were the receivers at Alabama. I think Georgia is lacking elite receivers right now. They dropped some balls. Alabama, you didn't see drop any balls.
No, they did. And I also would say that Alabama's offensive line did a pretty good job of keeping Jones in that pocket safe. He got hit a few times, he did, but Georgia's going to hit you, right? They're very good up front, and Alabama's offensive line did a great job. And then in the second half, it was just Harris, and that's the end of the game. But I agree with you. I think Mac Jones is somebody who has really just, he was very unknown. I mean, nobody really talked about him. And then last year he got his chance. And in spite of that Auburn game where there were 2 pick sixes, I still saw a lot of great things out of him. And boy, is he really taking advantage of his opportunity right now. And he is clearly going to be amongst the top 3 guys when you talk about the Heisman Trophy currently, along with Lawrence. And so I think Alabama is on their way. And defensively, I didn't think they could shut out Georgia. I think Georgia asked Bennett to do a little too much. I think he tried to do too much. Well, I think Georgia could have run the ball more. I mean, Bennett made some bad plays throwing the ball, but that's okay because
but his bad plays came when they were behind, trying to come from behind by double digits.
Right. But I'm thinking that if they stayed on the ground and ran the ball more, I thought they had a lot of success running the football, and that could have made it easier for him if they had stayed with that.
I thought he played well. I mean, he made some good throws, made a bunch of drops.
Yeah, he did have some drops. There's no question. I mean, in all fairness, he had some drops, but he also had some questionable throws. But it's okay because you're playing in a game that you probably didn't see yourself playing in a month and a half ago, and here he is. And so I don't know. I don't think they're going to do anything different at Georgia. I think he's their guy. I think Kirby has pretty much said that, and Georgia will be fine.
He's the best player on their roster.
Yeah, I mean, I know they're not going to go back to the other kids. So
he's a good player. He's a good player.
He's a good little player. Yeah, he is.
We got a Facebook Live comment here brought to you by Mental Law, where you matter most. Jeff wants to know, discuss the world title fight after the Alabama game. I missed it. Did you watch the boxing match?
Oh, Lord. No, I was watching the post-game Alabama reviews and what people were saying. And then I went back and watched some more of that second half because I just loved the way that they were able to keep Georgia out of the end zone, QB. So a boxing match just didn't come on my itinerary. I apologize for that, but we just haven't done a lot of talk about boxing. We do talk a lot about SEC football, QB, and in some of those games over the weekend, specifically that Auburn, South Carolina game, the Gamecocks they joined the SEC in 92. So since 92, they hadn't beat Auburn. So they did play Auburn. The last time they won was 1933. Do you know that gas was 10 cents a gallon in 1933, QB?
No,
you can buy that house. That mansion you live in would have costed $5,000 back in 1933.
Yeah, well, South Carolina did exactly what I thought they would do to Auburn. It's funny. It's funny. Whether it's Bo Nix's fault or not, I've seen enough of him. I don't think he can play in this league. He can run around and make plays, but he's not a good enough thrower. And it still baffles me that Gus Malzahn, he got his head coaching job at Auburn because when he called plays as offensive coordinator, and they won a national title. Well, now he is letting a guy named Chad Morris call plays for him who never won a game in the SEC. And I just don't understand it.
This guy named Chad Morris, for some reason, they're still carrying that SMU resume, and they were okay, but they're better now without him. I don't understand it either, QB. It's one of those mysteries in life, but good for Will Muschamp getting a huge win for South Carolina. Kentucky and Tennessee, my Vols have gone down, so maybe you were right. They'll only win 5 games this year. Tennessee, just so many mistakes. You throw 3 straight interceptions, and 2 of them go back to the house. Kentucky beat them, and the last time Kentucky, by the way, won at Tennessee was 1984. In 1984, Doug Flutie won the Heisman. BYU won the AP and coaches poll, even though Florida was better. The Apple Mac was the first computer sold by that company in 1984. So good for the Kentucky Wildcats. They are salty on defense, and Georgia better be careful when they play Kentucky. Another game, QB, that was pretty exciting to watch at the end was Memphis and Central Florida. This is the first time Memphis has beaten Central Florida since 1990. And back in 1990, which doesn't seem that far ago, but it was 21 years ago, Colorado won the national championship. Ty Detmer won the Heisman, and UCF was a 1AA school when they called it 1AA. That's 1990. and good for Memphis.
Speaking of the dang UCF Knights, they've blown an 18 and 20-point lead in their last two games.
Well, they're the best team in Orange County, Florida. There's no question about that. And
we got some Facebook Lives here, JC.
Throw them at us.
Rick brought to you by Mental Law, where you matter most. Rick says, how do the, quote, experts justify ranking Ohio State and Penn State in the top 10 when neither has played a game yet? The reason is because they're good football teams. They're expected to have good years. And when you see some of the teams that are being ranked in the top 10 have zero business, the North Carolinas of the world.
Notre Dame.
Notre Dame might be the most overrated football team I've ever seen.
But it's like this all the time with Notre Dame. For some reason, they get this respect that I just don't know what they've earned to get that. Clemson will beat them by 4 touchdowns and probably 6. So I don't really understand this love for Notre Dame and why they're so high. But you have to put somebody in the poll because the Big Ten and the Pac-12 aren't playing. The Big Ten will play this week. I think it'll be great to see just how good Ohio State is and whether or not Justin Fields has lost a step or not. I doubt it. He's going to do great in the Big Ten. He's going to do great.
Jeff has a point here. I kind of agree with him. I don't think it would have had anything to do with the outcome, but it did change the game. He says the late bogus pass interference call in the end zone against Georgia turned the game.
That was a
Yeah,
there was that was a questionable call. I don't doubt that for a moment. But before that happened, he threw the pick down there in the red zone. I think that's before that happened. But look, Alabama stopped them in the second half. I don't know how that could have happened with the way Alabama plays defense, but they didn't score. And that's the thing. You have to score. When you play Alabama, you have to outscore them. And Mississippi did a good job of trying to do that. Georgia, on the other hand, couldn't score. So when you don't score, you're losing. Another game that I thought was very interesting, QB, we talked about Kentucky, Tennessee already? Yes, we talked about Kentucky, Tennessee. We talked about South Carolina and Auburn. How about Florida State getting that big win with that quarterback? They were 13-point underdogs, and North Carolina came in ranked very high. Not that that's very important, but Florida State looks like they're getting slightly better as well with a new quarterback who's not throwing the ball, turning the ball over.
Yeah, I thought Florida State played well. They've improved dramatically. The quarterback change has helped.
It has.
North Carolina is not a 5th-ranked team in America.
No,
and it showed. Now they had their opportunities. They made a great comeback and dropped some balls, but
they did.
But good for FSU.
Good for FSU. A good game, a really good game was Mississippi and Arkansas. That's a huge rivalry. A lot of folks in the East don't know about Mississippi and Arkansas. They don't like each other at all. That's a big rivalry to those fan bases. And how about those Arkansas Razorbacks with the way they're playing defense, QB? Did you see 6 interceptions? And it could have been 8 interceptions. Mississippi could have thrown 8 interceptions if the guys don't drop 2 of those 6 or 2 of those 8. But they do take 8 interceptions. And how about this guy, this walk-on, Hudson Clark, with 3 interceptions for Arkansas? How about the Hawks? That's the story of the SEC right now, other than Alabama's offense, is the way Arkansas has turned that program around and should be 3-1 and not 2-2 because they beat Auburn.
That. And we got a text here on the Titan MR text line referring to that game. It comes from Daryl. He says, Shane, were you surprised that Kiffin left Matt Corral in the game Saturday instead of putting in John Rice Plumlee against Arkansas? I'm not, because John Rice Plumlee doesn't fit what Kiffin wants to do. He's not a good enough thrower. And when they were behind, here's the thing: Corral just forced too many balls, and he's good. What you're going to see, and give Barry Odom credit in Arkansas, phenomenal what they're doing. Now they ain't going to be playing defense like that against when they play Alabama, A&M, and these other teams that are more balanced. What they're doing to Ole Miss and Mississippi State now, everybody is, it's been Arkansas. They're only rushing 3 and dropping 8 into coverage.
8. Yes,
and,
8.
And the problem with Corral, he has no patience. You could see him trying to force balls. And that's the thing. I love having Leach and Lane in the league. But, JC, they can coach as if you and I were coaching a flag team, over here at the park. There's no pressure, and nobody expects them to win, so they can go for 4th downs every time they have a 4th down. You know what I mean? It's not, everybody's talking about, they're riverboat gamblers. Well, no, they're not. They have no chance if they punt the ball here, the other team's going to go score. So
Well,
they're good for the league.
They are
but
good for the league.
They got a long ways to go.
They do, and I think Mississippi State may have taken that step with this kid Will Rogers, who did look a little bit more under control. I don't know what has happened to KJ Costello, but his confidence has completely been he's lost it. When you simply drop the ball when you get hits because you're getting hit too much, and that offensive line almost felt like watching that game with Texas A&M that the offensive line was just simply saying, let's get this guy out of the game and let him just kill the dude. And then Coach Leach will bring in the other kid, which is what happened. And then look at what happened. All of a sudden, Osiris Mitchell was catching passes again. So I don't know. It's kind of odd. I think they're going to go with Will Rogers, great name, by the way, at Mississippi State, because I just don't think Costello has got the locker room. I think he's lost the team.
Yep. At Chris Doering Mortgage, they do mortgage lending right, helping home buyers throughout Gainesville and North Central Florida. Call Chris Doering Mortgage today, 352-244-0840. We'll be joined by Chris here shortly. But we got another text here on the Titan MR text line. I don't know who this is from. Just says, Gators are closer to the Dogs, but not Alabama. Do you agree? I think we're not close to either one of them at this point.
Well,
I'm being honest.
Well, Florida's going to score a lot of points, and maybe they'll get 41 on Georgia. I mean, why can't they get 41 on Georgia?
Well, maybe, but it's a different style of play than what Alabama has. I mean, we'll see.
Yeah. Well, Florida's got to run the football a little bit, and I think that helped Alabama, knowing that Harris was a big part of that game.
But here's the thing, JC. Here's the thing.
Okay.
It wasn't like Alabama had dudes running wide open. I mean, they have three elite receivers.
Yes, they do.
That made plays. So
yes, they do.
That's what I'm talking about. Georgia's still very, very good on defense.
But Jones, they're very good on defense. But Jones is so accurate on those.
He's
deep
extremely
passes.
accurate.
He's so accurate.
He is way above pace of Joe Burrow, what Joe Burrow did last year.
Which is unbelievable.
Way above pace.
Yeah. And so if he has better numbers than Burrow, how do you give Lawrence the Heisman against a bunch of flag football teams instead of Mac Jones? And I'm not saying that he will. But you just said he's ahead of Joe Burrow's pace from last year with 10 games as opposed to 12. Mac Jones is going to be in New York.
Yeah, he is. But, when you look at Trevor threw for over 400 yards in the first half and didn't play the rest of the game.
Yeah, I get that. He could have thrown for 800 yards.
The eyeball test tells you who the better player is. Now, Mac is a very good player, but Trevor Lawrence may be the best we've ever seen come out of college from a physical standpoint. You've heard this guy has a great arm, blah, blah, blah. But he can't ever put it together. This guy is –
I know, and I get it, and I'm as big a Trevor Lawrence fan as anybody, but the guy never gets hit. He never is under pressure. He did get hurt in his first season against Syracuse. That's the last time I think that guy got hit was 2 years ago. And granted, Ohio State put it on him. In fact, to me, in that playoff game, Ohio State was a better team than Clemson. They got a couple of bad calls, but you couldn't take that edge rusher for Ohio State was all over Trevor Lawrence. To Trevor's credit, he put that team on his back and won that game for Clemson against Ohio State. He did. But the guy's great. He's going to be the first pick in the NFL draft. He's going to go to the Jets. And so, that's what's going to happen. Look, here's the thing. You get to play for a lousy team. I almost said a bad word, who might have a new coach or who may not. But you're going to be in the city of New York. And there comes a lot of marketing value in the city of New York for a pretty boy like that guy. And he's tough as they come.
Here's the thing. I don't care if he played in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He's that good a player. He'll have plenty of marketing opportunities.
I get it.
Refresh your vehicle and your brand with a vehicle wrap from Wrap Spot. October is your lucky month at Wrap Spot. Mention promo code Shane and receive 13% off your vehicle wrap. JC,
go ahead.
Before we get to Doering, let's hear how our picks went.
Okay, our picks went very well. I mean, we are bringing value to the listeners and viewers because the QB had a very respectable 6-4. Your only losses were Mississippi, North Carolina, Central Florida, and the Cleveland Browns. However, this guy with the Tampa hat on went 8-2, so he now goes to 18-12. My only losses were Georgia. And
who doesn't even pick their own school?
I'm not picking against Alabama ever again. I don't care what the spread is, but I had an 8-2 week, and I am now one game behind you. You are 19-11. I've closed the gap 2 games. You are 19-11, which is outstanding. I am 18-12. When you think about it, 19-11, you've picked 19 out of 30 games correctly. That's almost a 66% ratio for picking against the spread. Why you're not in Vegas doing the daily wager on ESPN is everybody's mystery, because those guys on daily wager on ESPN, they have problems. You and I could go on that show and just knock it out of the ballpark and become famous, QB.
Yeah,
Would you like to be famous one day? Would you like to be famous one day, QB?
Nah, I'll let you handle that.
I'll do that. Okay. Good.
We got a also a reminder
Clemson.
tomorrow.
I got to say one more thing about Clemson, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I just want all our listeners to know Johnny Damon was advertised. Something came up. He's not able to join us tomorrow, but we're going to have AJ Przinsky, who's a huge Gator fan, long-time Major League Baseball catcher.
Yeah.
He'll be joining us to talk.
We were wrapping it up with Clemson and Trevor Lawrence. Dabo Swinney opened his coaching career at Clemson against Georgia Tech. It happened on October 18th, 2008. They lost that game 21-17. He was making $800,000. Fast forward, they now beat Georgia Tech 73-7. He's now making $9.3 million, and he's had 135 wins and 2 national titles. Dabo Swinney. And Spurrier pushed him around at the early stages of his career until he started out recruiting South Carolina and got the tables turned in that state.
Well, they had that phenomenal facility built. That helped recruit. But yeah, they could have scored. I watched some of that game, JC.
100 points.
They literally could have scored 100 points in that game against Georgia Tech.
And they can score 100 against Syracuse if they really wanted to. And I mean, Alabama could have scored 100 against Missouri if they wanted to. But, you got to get these other kids in the game. You have to. And you got to protect your players if you're going to make a run for a championship. So we've got a pretty clear picture right now. It's 3 teams, and I think the rest of the country. Ohio State will be interesting to watch as they start their season with 8 games on Saturday.
Yeah, and Gators will be back in action, on Halloween night?
Halloween, it's 2 weeks.
Against Missouri?
Yeah, against Missouri Tigers.
Yeah, it's a little concerning because we're going to have 2 weeks off of not practicing, not doing anything.
Well, you and Dora can talk about that, and I think the Georgia game is after the Missouri game. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So you've got a little time off now, but hopefully everybody's healthy and ready to go, and hopefully they won't get too rusty before those 2 games. They got to win them both. Yeah,
it's gonna be interesting because I think they're gonna be rusty. I mean, you think about it, for 2 weeks you don't practice at all. I mean,
it's hard. It's almost unfair, really. But that's just the way this is. 2020, baby.
Yeah, we got NFL. We got a doubleheader tonight, JC.
I like it.
You got the Chiefs and the Bills. Who you liking the Chiefs and the Bills?
I'm taking KC because I don't think they're losing 2 straight. Although Buffalo is a capable team, and then in the second game,
one of your teams, the Cowboys.
Oh, yeah, Dallas is playing.
Cardinals.
I think Dallas with Andy Dalton is fine. I don't think they're going to lose a whole lot there. I know Dak is their leader, and he's got great numbers, but I think Dallas and Andy Dalton will be okay. I think Dallas is going to win that awful division, maybe even with a 500 record or worse. But Arizona's tough. Arizona's a good team, and it'll be a pretty good game. But that Buffalo KC game is one I'm going to be excited to watch because that could go anywhere. That's a
5 o'clock start.
I love that. Don't you love that, QB? I mean,
I actually do. There's 2 good things that have come out of COVID. Only 2 good things. We get football all during the week.
Yeah, right.
And the greatest thing out of COVID is that golf courses make you ride in a cart by yourself, and that is just glorious.
Oh, and the third great thing for you, QB, is this thing called Zoom video.
Oh yeah, I love Zoom. But JC, honestly, is there anything better? I mean, I know you like to ride and talk and tell stories. No. I love to get to my golf ball, hit my shot, get in my cart, and go.
And go. And I bought a cheap little golf cart here, and I've always been riding by myself. I got used to it, and I can't ride with anybody now. I'm just kind of that way too, QB. I like having the whole thing because I can put my cooler and everything. I mean, yeah, give me my own golf cart.
Well, it's sped up play for some of these dudes that think they're on tour. It's the greatest thing ever happened.
Yes, right.
So JC, go hit them straight. Enjoy the games today, and we'll talk to you Wednesday.
You got it. We'll see you Wednesday. All right.
That's JC. Join us on the Titan Tomorrow hotline at Center State Bank. We put business first. We are the largest community bank in the state of Florida and understand that small businesses need a community business partner that they can rely on. Center State has 5 convenient Alachua County locations to serve you better. Center State Bank, member FDIC. We're going to take a quick time out. When we come back, we'll be joined by Gator Hall of Famer SEC analyst from the SEC Network, Chris Doering, will be joining the program.
Hey, Gator Nation, this is your former head ball coach, Steve Spurrier. Check out our show, Inside the Huddle with Shane Matthews and Steve Russell, every Tuesday during football season on 8:50 a.m. and 98.1 FM WRUF at 10 o'clock a.m.
We want to take this moment to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. Our Gridiron sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility.
Area Rug Masters, your number one choice in Gainesville for all your rug cleaning services.
Meldon Law, where you matter most. Peachland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte.
Celebration Point Town Center, Center State Bank, Chris Doering Mortgage. Some of our touchdown sponsors are Campus USA Credit Union, The Digital Mortgage Guy, Adams Ribs, Doreen Wiebe Realtor, Caldwell Banker MM Parish, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Davis Gainesville Chevrolet, Miapa Latin Cafe, Rap Spot, Okido America, Gators Dockside, Radware, Style Cuts, Ironwood Golf Course, TB Financial, Meadowbrook Golf Course, Dar Shakow Insurance.
Again, thank you for all the great businesses that support the show. Please remember, if you like what we are doing here, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
Welcome back to this Monday edition of Pod Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Celebration Points, where the Gators come to celebrate with premium brands like Bass Pro Shop, Tommy Hilfiger, Hotel Indigo, Nike, Medici's, Regal Cinemas, and coming spring of 2021, the HBC's new restaurant, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill and Visor Rooftop Bar. We will see you at Celebration Point, where the Gators come to celebrate. Now we're going to go to the Titan MR Hotline, and we're joined by SEC Gator Hall of Famer, SEC Network football analyst, Chris Doering. Good morning, Chris. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well, Shane. Good to be back with you, brother. Appreciate you having me.
Have you been by to see Coach's restaurant that they're putting at Celebration Point?
I haven't, man. It was making me laugh when you were reading that live read, but I'm excited, man. It might be a spot for all of us to be able to hang out with Coach.
Yeah, I tell you, I took a little tour. They had like a testing. I don't know if it was last week or 2 weeks ago. The chef was there preparing food.
Yeah,
it was good, man.
When's the open date?
Good. Huh?
What's the open date?
I want to say sometime in March.
All right.
So not too far from now.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, Gators were off, so we don't have to talk Gators right now. We all know they're in quarantine. Basically going to have 2 weeks off, then play Missouri, and then Georgia. So we'll talk more about them later. But the big game last night, Alabama, Georgia. Give me your initial thoughts.
You know what? I thought that this was the year that Georgia would be able to get over the hump. And they had times where they looked like they were up to the task. But, you know, Alabama just took it to another level, as they always do in the second half in this rivalry between these two teams. They separate themselves. I think Georgia thinks that they can win, and Alabama knows that they can win. And Alabama does whatever it takes in the second half. And Georgia has tried to basically build themselves to be what Alabama is. You know, and they look like them on the offensive and defensive lines. They look at them in a lot of the other ways. But the big thing that looks different to me, Shane, and maybe this is my own bias, but they don't have the wide receivers that Alabama does. I mean, nobody has the wide receivers that Alabama does. But that, to me, is the difference between where Georgia would like to be and where Alabama is right now.
No, I agree with you. You know, Mac Jones, he's having an unbelievable year. Probably, I think he's on a better pace right now through 4 games than Joe Burrow was. And he's played all SEC teams. But yeah. You're exactly right. Those 3 receivers that they have are phenomenal. And their route concepts, the speed, the yards after the catch. Georgia's got some good guys, but, you know, you saw Georgia drop a lot of balls. You know, I read on Twitter people talking about the difference in the game was, you know, Stetson Bennett. Stetson Bennett, he didn't play poorly. He missed some throws. He made some great throws, but Georgia dropped some balls as well. But Mac Jones is playing unbelievable right now.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to believe. First of all, we had him on our show a couple weeks ago. This is a dude that's right out of Jacksonville Bowls, you know, had no scholarship offers from anybody in the state of Florida, initially committed to Kentucky, ultimately gets an opportunity to go to Alabama, and having to fill the shoes of Tua Tagovailoa. You know, we're seeing Miles Brennan have to do that in Baton Rouge right now for Joe Burrow. It's a tough task. but that offense doesn't look like it's missed a beat, and that's a lot to say about what Mac Jones has been able to do. I think he completed 75% of his passes on Saturday night. I think his completion percentage went down. That's how good he's been in the first couple games of the season. But Shane, let's not forget the offensive line for Alabama. They take a lot of shots down the field, which requires a little bit of extra time. And Mac Jones is rarely ever harassed in the pocket. Didn't look like Georgia got to him an awful lot last night. I thought the other thing that stood out to me in the first quarter, I'm only through the first quarter and a half of the film looking at Alabama's offense, but Mac Jones wasn't that good in the first quarter. He was 4 of 10, 1 touchdown, 1 interception for 76 yards. 40 of those yards came off of the Mechie touchdown when they blitzed the corner. He got matched up on the safety, so they took advantage of that. But he didn't look necessarily comfortable. But I think as the game went on, they found more ways to get him feeling a little bit more confident and started to flow a little bit better in the final 3 quarters.
What I liked about that game is I thought both coaching staffs, for the most part, and like I said, I don't get to watch all 22 like you do, but you just mentioned it looked like Alabama knew the tendencies of Georgia, depending on what hash the ball was on. They knew the corner blitz was coming. They had max protection, which put a great receiver on a safety. Huge mismatch, huge touchdown. And then I think Georgia, Todd Monken, split what's his name, the Cook kid, number 4, out wide. Yeah. And they had him in man coverage, threw a deep touchdown to him. So I thought the X's and O's, the strategy was pretty good in this game.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you could tell they felt confident in Dalvin Cook's ability to catch the football, creating matchups, having him outside. They had Christian Harris, an inside linebacker, covering him one-on-one in space, and all Dalvin Cook did was basically run a straight line right past him. I mean, that's not an advantageous situation for an inside linebacker to be in. But I did like the scheming. That's the thing I wish I would see more in the SEC right now. I look at teams. I don't know how much you've gotten a chance to watch Auburn's offense play. I don't think they put Bo Nix in much position to be successful. I don't think they put the receivers in position to be successful. Largely, there's very few coordinators in this conference right now that I think do a great job of route combinations and scheming with alignment to put guys in positions to be successful in the passing game.
I agree 100% with that. Before we get to Auburn, I'm glad you brought them up. Looking at Georgia, you still think they're the team to beat in the East?
Yeah, I do. I think they are. And I know a lot of people will say, well, maybe their defense looks so good because they were playing against inferior opponents in the first 3 weeks of the season. But maybe there's some of that there. But I look at the tape, and again, I would love – we'll have to get together sometime. I'd love to watch some tape with you. I look at a defense that rolls a bunch of guys in there. They stay fresh throughout the game. They all look the same in terms of their size and height and ability. They know their assignments very well, incredibly sound with the way that they play. Last night, I don't know what it was, Shane, but it seemed like multiple times the guys in the secondary were falling down. I don't know if the footing was off or something was wet or whatever, but it looked like the Georgia defensive backs fell down on multiple occasions when the receivers were able to stay up. But at the end of the day, man, I still think this defense is very, very good. And I think, Florida's got a lot of work to do to get better defensively to be able to match what Georgia's going to be able to do.
Yeah, I agree. Auburn played at South Carolina. We have our little JC and I do picks on Friday, and I picked South Carolina to win the game. I think you did as well. Yeah. But Auburn, I do agree with you. They're not helping Bo Nix, but I've seen enough of Bo Nix, Chris. I don't think he can play in this league. He wants to run around way too much. Yep. He's very athletic, but you see the tape. But again, it's like Coach Spurrier said. For whatever reason, Gus Malzahn has Chad Morris, who didn't win a damn game, calling plays at Arkansas, and now he's calling plays for Auburn.
Yeah, knowing the heat that Gus Malzahn is constantly under there at Auburn, I don't know how or why he would have decided to give up the play calling duties. He just got him back a year ago. I talked to him, when he did take those back over, and he was so excited. I kind of compared him to Coach Spurrier. Like, the thing that got Coach where he was his ability to call plays, and that's what Gus Malzahn likes to do. That's what he's best at doing. And actually, he said many times before he looked up to Coach Spurrier in terms of his desire to coach like Coach Spurrier did. And so I was surprised that he turned it over, especially in a situation where Chad Morris had some questionable years there in Fayetteville. But I go back and look at what they're doing right now. The offensive line's terrible. And you're right, Bo Nix runs around way too much. But I wonder how much of it is because he doesn't trust the offensive line. I think at this point he doesn't trust his eyes either. There's plays that are sometimes there to be made that he doesn't let it go. And I think he feels like he's got to win games by running around. It's just a lot of pressure on him. And I wish I could have seen him in a different situation to maybe where he could have progressed and gained a little more confidence. Because you know better than I do. I think back to David Carr playing for the Texans when he got drafted there, number 1. He got brutalized by that offensive line, and I don't think he was ever the same and had the chance to really develop to what he could have potentially become.
We're speaking with Chris Doering here on the Titan More Hotline. You can check Chris out about every Saturday night from till about noon till midnight on the SEC network. Some long hours. Chris, I also picked Kentucky. Kentucky really should be 4-0 right now.
I'm with you.
Tennessee, everybody was on the Tennessee bandwagon. I think Jeremy Pruitt has improved them, but, it's kind of the same thing. I think he's stuck to his quarterback a little bit too long, maybe how Gus has with Bo Nix. Do you think they make a quarterback change this week for Alabama?
I think they probably need to. Jarrett Garantano, Cole Cuba came on our show and said something the other day about if you have that turnover gene in you, you can suppress it for a while, but it's going to come out eventually. And we saw it come out in the second half of the Georgia game. Saw it come out again this week. Just his ball security is not great in the pocket, and then pressing to make plays when they're not there is something that he's done. He looked to have improved it, and then now it's come back up to rear its ugly head. So Harrison Bailey, I thought, looked good. I wish they would have let him throw it a little bit more when he was in late in the game the other day, but he's going to be your guy eventually that's starting there. And I don't know how much confidence everybody else is going to have in Jarrett Garantano now after kind of that collapse against Kentucky on Saturday.
Yeah. And then I guess the one game that I think a lot of people were surprised, maybe not because Arkansas won it, but how Ole Miss, they threw six interceptions, but were you surprised at all? Barry Odom's done a tremendous job. I know Chizik talks about it all the time. Mm-hmm. And I feel like he probably had somewhat of the same game plan from when they played Ole Miss. Mississippi State. Let's just rush 3, drop 8 into coverage, bend but don't break, and eventually something bad will happen to the offense.
I'm glad you brought it up, Shane, because I actually wanted to take over your show and ask you some questions as the quarterback. I was watching the Arkansas Ole Miss tape just a few minutes ago. It's the exact same game plan. Everybody's using it against Mississippi State now. I think everybody's going to start using it against Ole Miss. You rush 3, you drop into coverage. Every once in a while, you bring an extra guy. But for the most part, I was surprised. First of all, Ole Miss's offensive line didn't protect very well. They didn't block very well against a 3-down front. But the thing that I saw from Matt Corral was a lack of patience. I think as a quarterback, and again, this is where I wanted to defer to you. I always thought, I'd rather a team drop 8 and allow us as receivers to work and find some holes when you have a lot of time for the quarterback to throw than I would for a guy to try to heat up a quarterback and make him get the ball out of his hands sooner. It was evident that Corral didn't have the patience to take the checkdowns, to take the swing passes. I thought they worked the perimeter well with some jet sweeps and little swings out of the backfield, but he wanted to throw the ball downfield. And, I think you obviously have to be patient, choose your shots. They hit a couple digs that were available, but largely it was just a lack of patience wanting to push the ball. Is that something as a quarterback? What would you rather face? Is it rather face guys dropping 8 like that or guys that are heating you up and you get one-on-one opportunities?
Well, I loved when teams blitzed us, but, we would want people to blitz us because we would max protect and we'd throw it down the field. I think when you watch, and like you said, you've seen the tape, I haven't, just watching it on TV, Matt Corral, I think with all the success that he's had in the previous games, running around, making plays, down the field, I think he had no patience, as you mentioned, because he was getting frustrated because he didn't want to dink and dunk. He wants that big play. And it looked like to me sometimes when he was running around, he was trying to do the Pat Mahomes no-look passes that turned into interceptions. I think it'll be a good learning experience where Lane, they can take this tape and go. I threw 5 interceptions in the game as well. So he threw 6, and it hurt him. But it's going to be interesting to see how all the teams in the SEC play Ole Miss and Mississippi State, because I think it's great for Leach and Lane to be in the league. But like I told somebody I don't know if it's on this show or another show I was doing,
Leach and Lane, they don't have to coach with the pressure all the other coaches have to coach with.
Yeah.
They're going to go for it on fourth down every time because they're not expected to win the games. People expect them to roll the dice. And I think you can just coach a lot freely that way and not have the pressure. Because I don't think anybody ever expects them to really compete at a high level.
Yeah, I mean, I think that sometimes the success that they may have had too much premature success. Those numbers, 623 yards passing against LSU for Mississippi State, set the bar pretty high. And the futility they've had the last couple of weeks, I think, has even further been magnified because of how well they did in the first game. But the plan's out for how you stop them. And I think the same thing could be said for Corral. I would say that there's a lot more talent on the Ole Miss roster offensively than what Leach inherited at Mississippi State. Mm-hmm. But right now, I mean, there's not a lot that they have to – nobody expects them to get to the SEC championship game. So you're right. The pressure's not on them right now. But I just look at Ole Miss. I thought Ole Miss heading into this week's game was probably the 6th or 7th best team in the SEC. And their defense is on pace to be the worst of all times, historically worse than 2018 UConn's defense, who was the worst of all time. They did show some signs of being a little bit better. But right now, if you can just be average defensively in the SEC, you got a chance to be a really good team.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's just hard to play defense these days. Chris, before we let you go, a couple of ACC games. Clemson did about what I thought they would do with Georgia Tech. I mean, they're by far, in my opinion, the most complete team out there, and then Alabama. And then FSU gets a big win over Mac Brown. Did you get to see either one of those games?
Yeah, we had them on in the studio. I didn't pay as much of attention to them as I did the SEC games. But obviously, Clemson's offense is fun to watch. Trevor Lawrence has a great feel for what they're doing, and they put him in position to be successful. Did you see the play they ran? It almost looked like they were going to run a quick toss to the right, and they slipped the tight end down the middle of the field. Yeah, great play design. They're a lot of fun to watch. And then with Florida State, I was shocked at how quickly they jumped out to that big lead, able to hang on. You and I are on the same page, I think, here, man. I hate Florida State. I hate Miami, but college football is better when those two teams are good. I miss the old days of the state of Florida being the epicenter of college football. So I'm hopeful that they can get back and be somewhat competitive here in the near future.
Yeah. Last thing, one more thing. Do you think A&M? I didn't think they played great against Mississippi State, and I think one thing is Mississippi State is playing really good defense.
Yeah.
I mean, they only gave up 21 points. Mississippi State threw a pick 6, I believe. But do you think A&M can run the table and go 9-1 and somehow get into the playoff?
I was not a believer in A&M at all. You're right about Mississippi State's defense. First of all, it's being wasted with how terrible their offense is, but their defense is really good. I was not a believer until I saw what they did against Florida. And, man, I don't know. Again, you didn't get a chance to watch the tape. But Florida kept bringing different pressures. They'd overload one side of the protection. And A&M's offensive line did a great job of picking up everything that Grantham sent at them. And then in issues where they weren't picked up, or instances where they weren't picked up, Mon was getting the ball out of his hand and getting out accurately. Now, I do think it stinks for them that they lost Caleb Chapman, who was developing into a pretty good receiver for them. They got to find a guy to step up in his spot. Chase Lane had a touchdown yesterday for them. But I think the thing that I see is the offensive line is really good. Spiller and Smith are a great duo in the backfield running the football. And I think their defense is getting better as well. If you look at the schedule, there's not a whole lot of challenges left on the schedule. Auburn's not very good. LSU's not very good. They drew Tennessee in addition to us with the expanded schedule from the East. So I think they very well could end up being 9-1. The thing that scares me for them is they've never really shown the propensity to be consistent, both as a team and Kellen Mond as a quarterback. But I think they are working through some of that and certainly gaining a lot of confidence right now.
Since you got to watch the tape, and I haven't talked to you since you watched the Florida tape, everybody's complaining about our defense. And just from seeing it on TV, I thought Jimbo had some great play calls. I thought the catches some of those guys made were great. It wasn't like we had people just running wide open.
Yeah.
Do you think from a defensive standpoint, was it more up front not being able to control the line of scrimmage or on the back end?
Yeah, you and I have behind the scenes here, we have a running text stream from time to time as games are going on. And you actually brought it up in that Ole Miss game, the defensive line. And I think everything that Florida suffers from defensively starts with the defensive line deficiencies. We've had the benefit of having studs up front. Even last year, Grenard, with his ability to penetrate both in the run game and getting after the quarterback, losing Zuniga. For the last few years, they're just guys that can create pressure and disrupt in the defensive line. Florida doesn't have that right now. They don't get a push at all up front. They don't penetrate. They don't get off blocks very well. They don't set the edge very well. And so subsequently, Florida has to try to bring pressure. And when they bring pressure, they leave situations where guys are in one-on-one situations, and they still don't get home. And when you ask a guy to cover for 4, 5, 6 seconds, I don't care how good you are, eventually you're not going to be able to stick with the receiver. And right now, everything in the back end is suffering because of how poor the defensive line's playing right now.
Yep, I agree 100%. Chris, appreciate you taking the time, my man. We'll talk to you soon. Enjoy your time up there talking SEC ball on the SEC network.
Appreciate you, Shane. Thanks, man.
All right, that's Chris Doering. Join us on the Titan Tomorrow Hotline. We're going to take our final time out of this program. When we come back, we'll wrap this show up.
This is Shane Matthews. Thank you for listening to Pot Up with Matthews in the Morning. You can also check me out on Inside the Huddle with Steve Russell and the head ball coach, Steve Spurrier. Tune in every Tuesday during football season on WRUF 98.1 FM, 8:50 a.m. at 10 o'clock in the morning, or find us on your favorite podcast platform.
We want to take this moment to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. Our gridiron sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility.
Area Rug Masters, your number one choice in Gainesville for all your rug cleaning services.
Meldon Law, where you matter most. Peachland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte.
Celebration Point Town Center, Center State Bank, Chris Doering Mortgage. Some of our touchdown sponsors are Style Cuts, Ironwood Golf Course, TB Financial, Meadowbrook Golf Course, Dar Shakow Insurance, Pomodoro Cafe,
Big Mills Cheesesteaks,
MB Listing, Cornerstone Financial, McDonald's Gainesville, My IT Masters, Gainesville Neon and Signs, 84 Lumber, Tropical Smoothie, Chick-fil-A on Archer Road, Aver and Smith Personal Injury Attorneys, Orange Theory Fitness, PRP Regeneration Specialist, and Dowling Signs.
Again, thank you for all the great businesses that support the show. Please remember, if you like what we are doing here, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
Welcome back to this Monday edition of Pot Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. This Day in Sports is brought to you by Area Rug Masters, Gainesville's most trusted area rug cleaners. With free pickup and delivery, Area Rug Masters is the convenient way to keep the focal point of your room looking brand new. Call Area Rug Masters 352-448-5999. This Day in Sports in 2009, Tom Brady throws 5 second-quarter touchdowns against the Tennessee Titans, and that's an NFL record for touchdown passes in one quarter. That's brought to you by Area Rug Masters. I want to thank JC for joining the program. Also, Chris Doering, UF Hall of Famer, also analyst with the SEC Network, does a tremendous job. We appreciate him taking the time to join us today. Don't forget to follow and like us on Facebook Live, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. But today's show's a wrap, brought to you by Wrap Spot. Stay safe, folks. We'll see you tomorrow.